Lucy Barnes walked through the long silver corridor of the Galactic Defense Academy, her boots making soft sounds against the metal floor as she moved toward Classroom 7, the place where her advanced combat tactics class would begin in just a few minutes. And she could already feel the stares of alien students watching her pass by with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open hostility. She was used to it by now, having spent 3 months at Station Orth 7 as one of only 12 humans among 3,000 alien students. But that did not make the weight of their eyes any lighter on her shoulders. And she kept her chin up as she entered the classroom and found her seat near the back. Danny Cole was already there, his brown hair messy as usual and his smile warm when he saw her. He waved her over to the empty seat beside him, and she sat down with a quiet sigh of relief. "You look tired," Danny said in a low voice, leaning closer so the other students would not hear. "Long night," Lucy replied. "I was practicing the defensive forms again because I want to be ready for whatever today brings." Danny nodded, but his eyes showed worry. He had been at the academy longer than Lucy, and he knew how difficult things could become for humans in certain classes, especially those taught by instructors who held deep prejudices against their kind. The classroom filled quickly with students of various species. Tall four-armed Karathi with their blue skin and sharp features. Massive Govan covered in natural armor plating that gleamed under the lights. Slender Threll with venomous spines running down their backs, and many others that Lucy had learned to recognize over her time at the academy. When the instructor entered, the room fell silent immediately. Her name was Valen, a Karathi female who stood nearly 7 feet tall with 4 arms that moved with graceful precision. Her eyes were a cold shade of purple, and they swept across the room before settling on the human students with an expression that Lucy could only describe as disgust. "Welcome to Advanced Combat Tactics," Valen said, her voice sharp and clear. "This semester we will focus on techniques that separate true warriors from those who simply rely on biological advantages to survive." Lucy felt Danny tense beside her, and she knew what was coming. Rumors had spread through the human community at the academy about Valen and her feelings toward their species. "Before we begin," Valen continued, "I must announce some new rules that will apply to certain students in this class." She tapped a device on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared in front of the room, listing several restrictions in bright red text. Human students will not be permitted to use enhanced endurance exercises. Valen read aloud. "No high-gravity conditioning techniques. No persistence-based tactics. No adrenaline-driven combat methods. And no predatory instincts during training or examinations." The classroom erupted in murmurs. Some students looked shocked, while others nodded in approval. And Lucy felt her hands tighten into fists beneath her desk. "These abilities," Valen said with a cold smile, "are what we call Deathworld tricks. They are the result of evolving on a planet so hostile that survival required developing biological weapons that other species simply do not possess. And allowing humans to use them freely would create an unfair and dangerous environment for everyone else." Lucy raised her hand slowly, her heart pounding but her voice steady when Valen acknowledged her with a dismissive wave. "Instructor Valen," Lucy said, "I have a question about these rules. Speak quickly." "Human. If humans are not allowed to use their natural abilities," Lucy said, "then why are other species permitted to use theirs?" "The Thrall students can use their venomous spines in combat training. The Gorvan can use their armor plating to tank through obstacles, and the Karathi can use all 4 of their arms. How is that different from what humans can do?" The room went silent, and Valen's purple eyes narrowed dangerously. "The difference," Valen said slowly, "is that humans come from a death world. Your planet has extreme temperatures, dangerous predators, toxic plants, unpredictable weather, and gravity that crushes the bodies of most other species. Your very biology is a weapon forged by millions of years of brutal survival. And that makes you fundamentally different from the rest of us. But that is not our fault, Lucy said, keeping her voice calm even as anger burned in her chest. We did not choose where we were born. Nevertheless, Merlin said, those are the rules. You will follow them or you will be removed from this class. And I suggest you accept this quietly rather than causing problems for yourself and your fellow humans. Danny grabbed Lucy's arm under the desk, silently begging her to stop. But Lucy could not let this go without one more question. Then what exactly am I allowed to do? Lucy asked. Valen smiled. And there was no warmth in it. You may use only the techniques taught in this class, she said. No instincts, no improvisation, no survival tricks, and no Deathworld advantages of any kind. You will learn like everyone else, or you will fail like the inferior beings some of us believe you to be. The insult hung in the air like poison, and Lucy felt the eyes of every student in the room watching her. Waiting to see how the human would respond to such open hatred, Lucy took a slow breath, forcing her anger down into a cold, hard place deep inside her chest where it could not control her. She had faced worse than this before. She had survived worse than this before. And she would not give Valen the satisfaction of seeing her break. And I will use my hands, Lucy said quietly. The room went completely still. Excuse me? Valen asked, her forearms crossing over her chest. You said no Deathworld tricks, Lucy repeated, her voice steady and clear. No endurance, no adrenaline, no predator instincts. Fine. Then I will use my hands, because these hands are not tricks. They are just hands. And whatever I can do with them, using only the techniques you teach should be acceptable under your rules. Valen stared at her for a long moment, and something flickered in those purple eyes that might have been surprise or might have been the first seeds of hatred taking deeper root. We shall see, Valen said finally, turning away to begin the lesson. We shall see what a human can do when stripped of everything that makes them dangerous. Lucy sat back in her seat, and Danny leaned close with fear written across his face. What are you doing? He whispered. She is going to make your life miserable. She was going to do that anyway, Lucy whispered back. At least now she knows I will not break easily. Across the room, another human student caught Lucy's eye. Her name was Kira Moss, and she had been at the academy for 2 years, surviving discrimination and hardship that would have driven most people away. She gave Lucy a small nod of respect, and Lucy returned it. The class continued, and Valen taught basic defensive positions that Lucy already knew. But she paid attention anyway, memorizing every detail, because she understood something that Valen did not. Humans had not survived on Earth by being the strongest or the fastest or the most deadly. They had survived by being adaptable, by learning, by refusing to give up. Even when the odds seemed impossible, and wanted to strip away everything that made humans dangerous, Fine Lucy would show her what a human could do with nothing but determination and 2 simple hands. 1 week passed at the Galactic Defense Academy, and Lucy Barnes spent every free moment practicing. She woke before the artificial dawn cycle and trained alone in the empty halls. She studied the defensive forms until her muscles memorized every movement. And she went to sleep each night with her body aching, but her mind sharp and focused. Danny Cole worried about her constantly, telling her that she was pushing too hard and that Valen was not worth destroying herself over. But Lucy just smiled and kept practicing because she knew something that Danny did not understand yet. This was not about Valen anymore. This was about proving that humans belonged here just as much as any other species in the galaxy. When the day of the practical examination arrived, Lucy felt ready. Not confident exactly, because she knew how much the odds were stacked against her, but ready to face whatever came with everything she had. Examination took place in a large training arena on the lower levels of the station. It was a combat course designed to test reaction time, tactical thinking, and defensive skills, with robotic opponents programmed to attack at unpredictable intervals, obstacle fields that required quick navigation, and simulated threat scenarios that would challenge even the most experienced students. Violin stood at the control platform overlooking the arena, her forearms clasped behind her back and her purple eyes watching the students gather below with cold satisfaction. "Today, you will be tested individually," Valen announced, her voice echoing through the arena. "You will enter the course alone, and you will demonstrate what you have learned over the past week. Your performance will be graded on technique, efficiency, and adherence to proper form." The alien students went first, and Lucy watched carefully from the waiting area, studying their movements and noting their strengths and weaknesses. A Thrall female named Siska entered the course with graceful speed. When robotic opponents attacked her, she used her venomous spines to disable them quickly, striking with precision that left the machine sparking and motionless on the ground in seconds. "Excellent use of natural advantages," Valen said approvingly when Siska finished. "This is what proper combat looks like when a warrior utilizes their full potential." Lucy felt the words like a knife, but she kept her expression. Neutral. Next came a Gorvan male named Trith, massive and covered in thick armor plating that gleamed like polished stone. He did not bother with technique or finesse, simply charging through the obstacles and letting the robotic opponents break themselves against his natural defenses. "Impressive durability," Valen noted. A true example of physical superiority. More students followed, each one using their species' unique abilities to complete the course with varying degrees of success. And through it all, Lucy watched and learned and waited for her turn. Finally, Valen called her name, and the arena fell silent. Lucy walked to the starting position with her head held high, ignoring the whispers and stares from the alien students around her. Danny gave her a thumbs up from the waiting area, and Kira Moss watched with tense hope in her eyes. "Before you begin," Valen said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I want to remind you of the restrictions that apply to human students. No endurance running, no adrenaline-based reactions, no predator instincts, and no Deathworld survival techniques of any kind. You will complete this course using only what has been taught in class, or you will fail immediately." "I understand," Lucy said calmly. "Then begin." The course activated around her, and Lucy moved forward at a measured pace. Not slow exactly, but controlled, deliberate, careful not to trigger anything that could be called enhanced human endurance. The first robotic opponent appeared from behind an obstacle and swung at her with mechanical precision. Lucy used a basic block taught in class, deflecting the blow and stepping aside with textbook form that even Valen could not criticize. But she did not strike back. She simply defended and moved on because she needed to conserve her energy without using anything that could be called an adrenaline burst. More opponents came, and Lucy handled each one the same way, blocking, deflecting, moving past them with careful footwork that followed exactly what she had been taught. She took hits, small ones that stung but did not stop her, because avoiding them entirely would require reflexes that might be labeled as predator instincts. The crowd watched in confused silence as Lucy made her way through the course. She was not fast, she was not impressive. She was just surviving, and to many of them that seemed pathetic compared to what other students had accomplished. Then everything changed. Large robotic opponent cornered her against a wall, its mechanical arms swinging in patterns designed to overwhelm and trap. Lucy had nowhere to go and no way to escape without running, which would trigger the endurance restrictions, so she did something else as the robot swung its arm toward her face. Lucy grabbed it with both hands and twisted hard. She used its own momentum against it, pulling and turning until the machine's balance shifted. Then she threw it over her shoulder with a move that came from pure physical strength and knowledge of leverage. Nothing more. The robot crashed to the ground behind her, and the watching students gasped in shock. "Stop!" Valen shouted from the control platform, her voice sharp with anger. "Human, you have violated the restrictions." That was clearly a Deathworld combat reflex. Lucy turned to face her, breathing hard but keeping her voice steady. "No, Instructor." "It was not," Lucy said. "What I used was a basic throw. A technique that relies on leverage and momentum rather than strength. You taught a version of this move in class 3 days ago, when demonstrating how smaller opponents can defeat larger ones. You used enhanced reflexes to grab the robot's arm." Valen insisted. "I used my hands," Lucy replied. "My hands grabbed metal and my muscles pulled. There was no adrenaline, no predator instinct, just physics and the technique you yourself taught us." Valen's purple eyes blazed with fury, but she could not argue. The move had been legal, technically within the rules she herself had established, and everyone watching knew it. "Continue," Valen said through clenched teeth. Lucy finished the course without further incident, using only basic forms and simple movements that could not be criticized. Her time was slower than most other students, and her technique was nothing spectacular. But she completed every challenge without breaking a single rule when she exited the arena. Danny rushed to meet her with relief flooding his face. "That was incredible," he said. "The way you threw that robot was amazing." "It was just a throw," Lucy said, but she was smiling. Kira Moss joined them, her eyes bright with something that looked like hope for the first time since Lucy had met her. "You actually did it," Kira said quietly. "You beat her at her own game." "Not yet," Lucy replied, looking up at the control platform where Valen stood watching them with hatred burning in her purple gaze. "This was just the first test, and she is going to make things much harder for me now." "Then what will you do?" Danny asked. Lucy flexed her hands slowly, feeling the strength in them, the potential that no rule could ever truly take away. "The same thing I did today," she said. "I will adapt, I will learn, and I will use what I have above them." Valen was already planning her next move, already thinking of ways to break the human who had dared to challenge her authority. And the war between them was only beginning. The days that followed the practical examination became a special kind of torture for Lucy Barnes, as Instructor Valen found new and creative ways to make her life at the academy as difficult as possible without crossing the line into official misconducted. Started with extra drills assigned only to Lucy. While other students rested between exercises, she was ordered to repeat basic forms over and over until her arms trembled and her legs burned with exhaustion. Valen called it remedial training for a student who needed to catch up. But everyone knew the truth. Then came the constant criticism. No matter how perfectly Lucy performed the technique, Valen always found something wrong with it. Her stance was too wide or too narrow. Her arms were positioned incorrectly. Her breathing was not controlled enough. Every class became an endless parade of insults, disguised as instruction. The worst part was the sparring assignments. Valen deliberately paired Lucy with the largest and strongest alien students, opponents who outweighed her by hundreds of pounds and possessed natural weapons that she was forbidden to match with her own abilities. Danny. Cole confronted her one evening after a particularly brutal session where a Gorvan student had thrown her across the training mat hard, enough to leave bruises that would last for days. "This has to stop," Danny said, his voice tight with anger. "She is trying to hurt you, and the academy is letting her do it." "She is trying to make me quit," Lucy corrected him, wincing as she pressed ice against her shoulder. "There is a difference, is there?" Danny demanded. "Because from where I am standing, it looks like she wants to break you one piece at a time." Lucy looked at him with tired eyes, but a steady spirit that refused to bend. "If I quit," she said slowly, "then she wins. If I complain to the administration, She will say she was just pushing me to improve, and I will look weak. The only way to beat her is to endure everything she throws at me and keep going until she runs out of ways to hurt me." Danny shook his head, but he knew she was right. The politics of the academy favored instructors over students, especially when those students were humans from a Deathworld that many species feared and hated. As the weeks passed, something unexpected began to happen. Other students started to notice Lucy's treatment, and some of them did not like what they saw. A young Velaran female named Tessing approached Lucy after class one day. Her large silver eyes filled with something that might have been shame. "I want to apologize," Tessing said quietly. "When you first arrived, I believed what everyone said about humans being dangerous cheaters who do not deserve to be here. But watching how Instructor Valen treats you has made me question those beliefs." Lucy was surprised, but she kept her voice gentle. "Thank you for telling me that," she said. "How do you keep going?" Tessing asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Any other student would have broken by now, or asked for a transfer to another class. Lucy considered the question carefully before answering. "On Earth," she said, "we have a saying that what does not kill you makes you stronger. I do not know if that is always true, but I do know that giving up has never made anyone stronger." Tessing nodded slowly and walked away with a thoughtful expression. And Lucy allowed herself a small moment of hope that perhaps not everyone at the academy was against her, but hope was dangerous. As she learned during the group exercise that Valen announced the following week, "Today you will work in teams of 4, Valen said with a smile that made Lucy's stomach tighten. "You will complete a rescue simulation where a hostage must be extracted from a dangerous location. Teamwork, communication, and coordination will be essential." Lucy waited for her team assignment with growing dread. And her fears were confirmed when Valen placed her with 3 Karathi students who had made no secret of their hatred for humans. Their names were Davik, Sorrel, and Veth. And they looked at Lucy like she was something unpleasant stuck to the bottom of their boots. The simulation began, and Lucy tried her best to work with her team. She suggested strategies and offered to take difficult positions. But her teammates ignored her completely. It got worse once they entered the simulation. Davik deliberately blocked her path when she tried to move forward, forcing her to find alternate routes that cost precious time. Sorrel refused to respond to any of her communications, pretending not to hear her voice over the team channel. And Veth actually pushed her into the line of fire from a simulated turret, forcing Lucy to dive for cover or take a direct hit. They were sabotaging her, openly and without shame. Knowing that Valen would never punish them for it, Lucy felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced it down, because anger would not help her here. What she needed was to think, to adapt, to find a way forward that did not require her teammates' cooperations. She remembered what Valen had said at the beginning of the semester about no improvisation and no survival tricks. But working around obstacles was not a trick. It was just problem solving. And no rule could forbid that Lucy started using hand signals instead of voice communication, positioning herself where she could see her teammates' movements and anticipate where they would try to block her next. When they moved left, she went right. When they fell back, she pressed forward, turning their sabotage into a strange dance where she always stayed one step ahead. Simulated hostage was located in a small room at the center of the exercise area, guarded by robotic opponents that her teammates showed no interest in helping her defeat. They stood back and watched, waiting for her to fail. Lucy did not fail. She used basic techniques to disable the first robot, then the second, taking hits that hurt but did not stop her. When she reached the hostage, a weighted dummy designed to simulate an injured person, she realized that her teammates were nowhere nearby to help carry it, so she lifted the dummy onto her shoulders and carried it herself. The weight was significant, and every step sent pain shooting through her tired muscles. But she did not use enhanced endurance. She did not push beyond normal human limits. She simply walked forward one step at a time until she reached the extraction point and set the hostage down safely. Her team failed the exercise because their coordination score was almost 0. But Lucy personally completed the rescue objective, and Valen could not take that away from her after the exercise. Valen marked Lucy's individual score as a failure, claiming she had not demonstrated proper teamwork. Lucy accepted the grade without argument and walked away with her head held high that night. Kira Moss found Lucy alone in the training hall, practicing basic forms over and over, despite the exhaustion that weighed down every movement. "Why do you keep going?" Kira asked, sitting down beside her. "You know she will never give you a fair chance." Lucy lowered her arms and turned to face her friend, her eyes tired but filled with something that had not broken despite everything. "Because giving up would prove them right," Lucy said. "They think humans are only dangerous because of our biology. They think if you take away our advantages, we become nothing. I am going to show them that what makes humans dangerous has never been our bodies." "Then what is it?" Kira asked. Lucy smiled, flexing her bruised hands. "It is the part of us that refuses to stay down," she said. "No matter how many times we fall outside the training hall." The artificial stars of Station R7 glittered in the simulated night sky. And somewhere in her quarters, Instructor Valen was planning her next attack against the human who simply would not break. Word of Lucy Barnes and her treatment at the hands of Instructor Valen spread through the Galactic Defense Academy like fire through dry grass. Students whispered in corridors and debated in common areas, taking sides in a conflict that had grown far beyond a single classroom. Some supported Valen's restrictions, arguing that humans from Deathworlds possessed unfair biological advantages that should be controlled for the safety of other species. They pointed to Earth's violent history, to humanity's reputation as dangerous predators, and to ancient fears that had existed since the first contact between humans and the galactic community. But others saw things differently. They watched Lucy endure punishment after punishment without breaking. They saw her teammates sabotage her without consequence while Valen looked the other way. And they began to question whether the restrictions were about fairness at all or simply about hatred disguised as policy testing. The Valeran became one of Lucy's unexpected defenders, speaking up in common areas when other students repeated Valen's propaganda about dangerous Deathworld tricks. "I have watched her closely," Tassing told anyone who would listen. "She follows every rule. She uses only techniques taught in class. And still she is punished. This is not about safety. This is about prejudice." The controversy eventually reached the attention of Commandant Zeth, an elderly Valeran who had overseen the academy for nearly 40 years and was known throughout the station as a fair and thoughtful leader. One morning, Lucy received a message summoning her to the Commandant's office. She walked through the administrative corridors with her heart pounding, unsure whether she was about to be expelled or offered some kind of help. Commandant Zeth's office was simple and functional, with large windows overlooking the station's central hub, where ships from across the galaxy docked and departed. He sat behind a modest desk, his silver fur showing patches of white with age, and his eyes carrying the weight of countless decisions. "Please sit down, Lucy Barnes," he said, his voice gentle but carrying an authority that came from decades of leadership. Lucy sat in the chair across from him and waited, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "I have been reviewing reports about Instructor Valen's Advanced Combat Tactics class," Zeth said. "There have been complaints from other students and staff members who feel that certain policies may be unfairly targeting human students. I have not filed any complaints," Lucy said carefully. "No, you have not," Zeth agreed, "which is one of the reasons I wanted to speak with you directly. I want to understand your perspective on what has been happening." Lucy took a deep breath and considered how to answer. She could be cautious and political, saying only what was safe. Or she could tell the truth and trust that this ancient Velaran actually wanted to hear it. She chose the truth. I do not want special treatment, Lucy said. I never asked for advantages over other students or exceptions to the rules. All I want is for the rules to apply equally to everyone. Meaning? Zeth asked. Meaning that if humans cannot use our natural abilities, Lucy said, then neither should anyone else. Thrall students use their venom. Gorvan students use their armor. Korathi students use all 4 of their arms. But humans are forbidden from using anything that makes us who we are. That is not equality, that is discrimination. Zeth listened without interrupting, his silver eyes watching her with an expression she could not read. Instructor, Valen believes that human biology is inherently more dangerous than other species' natural abilities, he said. She argues that allowing humans full access to their capabilities would create safety risks. With respect, Commandant, Lucy replied, that argument could be used against any species. A Thrall's venom can kill, a Gorvan's strength can crush, and a Korathi's 4 arms provide advantages that humans will never have. If danger is the standard, then every species should be restricted. A fair point, Zeth acknowledged. Tell me something, Lucy Barnes. How have you been coping with the restrictions that have been placed on you? Lucy allowed herself a small smile despite the tension she felt. I have been using my hands, she said. Just my hands and the techniques taught in class. Nothing more. Zeth was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those ancient silver eyes. You know, he said finally, I have lived for many years, and I have seen many species pass through this academy. Some have been brilliant, and some have been ordinary. Some have been kind, and some have been cruel. But I have learned that true character is revealed not when things are easy, but when they are hard. He leaned forward slightly. What you have shown, Lucy Barnes, is something that I believe Instructor Valen does not understand. She thinks that taking away your biological advantages will make you weak. But you have proven that human strength comes from somewhere deeper than muscles and reflexes. Lucy felt hope rising in her chest, but she did not let herself believe too strongly. Hope had been dangerous before. I cannot promise you that things will change immediately, Zeth said. There are procedures and politics that must be considered. But I want you to know that I am watching, and I will not allow injustice to continue indefinitely. Lucy nodded, unsure of what to say. You may go, Zeth said gently. And Lucy Barnes? Keep using your hands. Sometimes the simplest tools are the most powerful. She left the Commandant's office feeling slightly better, but knowing that nothing had truly changed yet. Valen still controlled her classroom and still had the power to make Lucy's life miserable. The next day, Lucy discovered just how far Valen was willing to go and announced a special challenge to the entire class. Her purple eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction, to demonstrate proper technique and the superiority of trained skill over biological advantage. Valen said, we will hold an exhibition match. Lucy Barnes will face our academy's top-ranked combat student in a one-on-one bout. The room went silent, and Lucy felt ice form in her stomach as she realized who Valen meant. The massive Gorvan, who had crushed the practical examination weeks ago, stepped forward with a confident smile. He was nearly 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that could deflect most weapons. And he had never been defeated in any academy competition. This will be a fair test of technique. Valen continued, her voice dripping with false sincerity. No Deathworld tricks, only what has been taught in class. Surely a human who claims to need nothing, but her hands will have no problem demonstrating her skills against a fellow student. Danny Cole grabbed Lucy's arm after class, his face pale with fear. You cannot do this, he said. Trith will destroy you. He is twice your size and covered in armor, and no amount of technique will help you against that. If I refuse, Lucy said quietly. Valen will use it as proof that humans are cowards who can only fight when they have their unfair advantages. Then let her. Danny begged. Your safety is more important than proving a point. Kira Moss appeared beside them, her expression serious but not afraid. If you fight him, Kira said, you might lose badly. But if you do not fight, you lose something more important. You lose the chance to show everyone what a human can really do. Lucy looked at her friends, at Danny's fear and Kira's fierce hope, and she made her decision. I will fight, she said. Danny closed his eyes in despair, but Kira nodded with approval. How will you beat him? Kira asked. Lucy flexed her hands slowly, feeling the strength in them, thinking about everything she had learned and everything she had survived. I do not know if I can beat him, she admitted, but I know that I will not give up. And I know that I will use every technique I have been taught, and I know that when it is over, no one will be able to say that humans are only strong because of our biology. The match was scheduled for the end of the week, and the entire academy was already buzzing with anticipation for the spectacle of a human being crushed by a Gorvan champion. But Lucy Barnes was not thinking about losing. She was thinking about her hands and what they could do when guided by a mind that refused to surrender. The arena was packed with students from every species at the Galactic Defense Academy. Thousands of alien eyes watching as Lucy Barnes walked toward the combat circle where Trith the Gorvan already stood waiting. The massive champion looked like a mountain of living stone, his natural armor gleaming under the bright lights and his confidence radiating from every movement. Lucy felt small as she took her position across from him. She felt the weight of every stare, the doubt and curiosity, and in some cases the hope of the few who believed she might somehow survive this impossible challenge. Instructor Valen stood at the edge of the circle with barely concealed glee on her blue Karathi features. This was her moment of triumph, the proof that humans stripped of their Deathworld advantages were nothing but weak creatures who had no business attending an elite academy. Danny Cole watched from the crowd with his hands clenched tight enough to turn his knuckles white. Beside him, Kira Moss stood with her arms crossed and her jaw set, refusing to look away, even though she feared what was about to happen to her friend at the highest viewing platform. Commandant Zeth observed in silence, his silver eyes missing nothing. This exhibition match will test pure technique, Valen announced to the crowd. No weapons, no armor, and for certain students, no Deathworld tricks of any kind. Only the skills taught in this academy will be permitted. She turned to Lucy with a smile that held no warmth. Human, do you understand the rules? I understand, Lucy said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear that churned in her stomach. Then begin. Trith attacked immediately, his massive fist swinging toward Lucy with enough force to shatter bone. She barely dodged in time, feeling the wind of his strike pass inches from her face as she moved to the side. The crowd gasped, but Lucy did not have time to appreciate their reaction. Treth was already swinging again, using his size and reach to push her back toward the edge of the circle where she would have nowhere left to run. She blocked where she could and dodged where she could not, using every defensive technique she had learned over the past weeks. Her arms ached from deflecting his heavy blows, and her legs burned from constant movement. But she did not stop, she did not fall, she did not give up. The crowd began to murmur. They had expected a quick and brutal defeat, but the human was still standing, still moving, still fighting despite the impossible odds against her. Valene's smile started to fade. Lucy was not just surviving. She was watching, learning, studying her opponent with the same careful attention she had given to every challenge since arriving at the Academytrith's armor protected his chest, back, and limbs almost completely. But she noticed that his joints were exposed, the flexible spots where his armor plates met that allowed him to move. She saw that his neck was vulnerable where it emerged from his shoulder protection. And most importantly, she realized that his balance, despite his enormous size, was not perfect. He was so used to opponents bouncing off his armor that he had never learned to handle someone who did not try to overpower him directly. Lucy waited for her moment, letting Treth push her back, letting him grow confident that victory was only seconds away. She took hits that she could have avoided, because avoiding them would require reflexes that might be called predator instincts. And each strike that landed made the crowd wince and Valen's smile return, but Lucy was counting, measuring, preparing when Treth swung his massive right fist in a powerful hook that he clearly expected to end the fight. Lucy moved. She did not dodge backward or to the side. Instead, she stepped forward, inside his reach where his arm had already passed. And she grabbed his wrist with both hands. Before he could react, she twisted her entire body, using his own momentum against him exactly as she had done to the robot in the practical examination weeks ago. But this time, she combined it with a leg sweep. Kicking at the back of his knee where no armor protected him, Treth stumbled, his balance broken for the first time anyone could remember. And Lucy did not waste the opportunity. She struck with her palm, driving it hard into the soft spot beneath his arm where his armor plate separated. It was not a powerful blow by Gorvan standards, but it was perfectly placed, hitting nerve clusters that made his right arm go numb, and useless Treth roared in surprise and anger, swinging his left arm wildly, but Lucy was already moving again. She ducked under his swing and swept his other leg, combining timing and leverage to bring the giant crashing down to the arena floor. The impact shook the entire platform before Treth could recover. Lucy was on him. She grabbed his arm and twisted it into a joint lock, applying pressure to the exposed elbow where no armor could protect him. One more push, and the joint would break, and both of them knew it. "I yield," Treth shouted, slapping the floor with his free hand in the universal signal of surrender. The arena exploded into chaos. Students who had never seen Treth defeated screamed in disbelief. Others cheered with genuine joy for the human who had accomplished the impossible. And some simply stared in stunned silence, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Valen's face had gone pale with fury. "This is illegal," she shouted, storming toward the combat circle. The human used Deathworld techniques. She used enhanced reflexes and predator instincts. This match must be invalidated. But before she could reach the circle, another voice cut through the noise. "I disagree." Commandant Zeth descended from his viewing platform, his silver fur gleaming and his ancient eyes carrying the full weight of his authority. "I have been watching this match very carefully," Zeth said, his voice calm but carrying across the silent arena. "Lucy Barnes used a throw, a technique taught in week 2 of your curriculum. She used a leg sweep, taught in week 3, a palm strike to vulnerable areas, taught in week 4, and a joint lock, taught in week 1 as a fundamental submission technique." He turned to face Valen directly. "Every single thing she did was something you taught in your own class. She used no enhanced reflexes, no predator instincts, no Deathworld advantages of any kind. She used her hands, her knowledge, and her determination." Valen opened her mouth to protest, but Zeth raised one hand to silence her. "This match stands," he declared, "and I believe it is time for the Academy to reconsider certain policies that have clearly been motivated by prejudice rather than genuine safety concerns." He addressed the crowd now, his voice reaching every corner of the arena. "What we have witnessed today is not a Deathworld trick or an unfair advantage. It is what humans are. They are survivors who adapt to any situation, who learn from every challenge, and who refuse to give up no matter how impossible the odds. Perhaps instead of fearing them, we should be learning from them." Valen was removed from her teaching position before the day ended. New policies were drafted to ensure that all species would be treated fairly and that no student would face discrimination. Based on their homeworld, Lucy was offered a position as a training assistant for next year's incoming class, an honor rarely given to students who had not yet graduated. As she left the arena, Danny and Kira walked beside her, their faces shining with pride and relief. "How did you know you could beat him?" Danny asked. Lucy flexed her hand slowly, looking down at them with a quiet smile. "I did not know," she admitted. "I just used what I had." "And what was that?" Kira asked. Lucy looked up at her friends, at the stars visible through the station's massive windows, at the future stretching out before her full of possibilities that no one could take away. "Just my hands," she said. "And everything they taught me was impossible." The universe was vast and filled with species who underestimated humanity. But Lucy Barnes had proven something important today, something that would echo through the academy and beyond for years to come. Humans were not dangerous because of where they came from. They were dangerous because of what they refused to surrender, no matter the cost, no matter the odds, and that was not a trick. That was simply being human.